That'd be funny.
That would have been good. Yeah. I have no idea what you mean, but I'll pretend to know what's going on.
I'm sure this is going to be awesome.
And we are live. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Stokastic DFS Showdown, live before lock Monday Night Football edition. My name is Matt Savoca at Draftaholic on the Twitters, and we're talking with my good friends, Matt Gajewski and the Showdown Shaman, Neil Orfield. This guy is an incredible DFS player, and I don't know what you guys are seeing on the screen, but apparently there's a possibility that producer Mike is using some trickery possibility here.
None of us understood.
None of us understands this magic, this Halloween magic. Happy Halloween, everyone. We're goofing around just a little bit before we get into the action. We got a lot to dig into, an interesting slate, the Cincinnati Bengals versus the Cleveland Browns. And we are brought to you today by No House Advantage. Have an awesome offer from them. But we'll start with Neil. Happy Halloween, bud. How are you today? Follow him at PlayerQDFS.
I'm doing great. So yeah, I have pulled up the chat, and it was you in the middle, and then Gajewski on both sides of you. So I'm not currently showing on the screen. Oh, I guess I am now. Now I am.
Now here you are.
Now I am. But for a second there was Gajewski on both sides of you. The joke that Mike was trying to make is that I was going as Matt Gajewski for Halloween. It was a good effort. We didn't really explain. Nobody understood it, so we didn't really explain what was
we
happening.
also got into the joke. But as our mics were hot, we did not discuss this at all. Not even 30 seconds before. We didn't do that great.
Yeah, it was a good effort though. I appreciated the thought by producer Mike. We'll make it work next Halloween, I guess. Yeah, I'm doing great. Not handing out candy right now. People don't really come on. I live on kind of a busy street, so I don't think we get trick-or-treaters, but we did not put out any candy under the assumption that we don't, sadly. So no costume, no. I'm just I guess I'm the Grinch of Halloween. I don't know.
The Grinch of Halloween, player Q DFS. Maybe the
I
name
love Halloween
sticks.
though. I love Halloween, so I guess I'm not.
It's one of my favorites. Matt Gajewski. Follow him at Matt_Gajewski. Do people come and trick or treat on your street? Is it a busy place or not so much?
I live in an apartment. There are some trick or treaters, but we had the city organizes one, and it was on Saturday night, so it's not tonight. All the trick or treaters are done. But for this Halloween bit, I wish it would have been flipped. I would have really liked to be Millie Maker winning Neil Orfield. And I'm sure he does not want to live in my studio apartment and flip that around. So next Halloween, I want to be Neil.
For the record, producer Mike, that's what I thought you said. I thought you were going to show two Neils. I
thought I was going to be Millie Maker Neil.
That's what I thought. I thought that's what we were getting. But hey, we'll get there. We'll get there in our next comedy routine. See us at the matinee tomorrow. We'll try it out. We'll try it out again.
Matinee, double T, huh?
Oh, wow. All right, let's talk Bengals and Browns. 45-point total. Right now, the Bengals are road favorites, 3-point favorites to say. Neil, let's talk about this team. The Bengals lost Jamar Chase. They still have a potent offense. We need to see what T. Higgins looks like as a number one receiver. But ultimately, we still think that they have the firepower offensively and just enough defensively to overcome a Browns team that likes to be conservative and doesn't usually push the tempo or score a ton of points.
Yeah, I like the spot for the Bengals today. It's I don't know what to say. It's the Browns defense is just not very good in terms of DVOA. They look bad both against the rush and against the pass. This is still a great Bengals offense. I'm expecting big things from this offense. Now it's going to be 17-10 probably now that we're talking them up. But it's it's showdown. You can only play so many players. I'm going to be playing a lot of these Bengals guys.
Absolutely. And Matt, the big change in the offense, obviously, T. Higgins moving into that clear number one role. Obviously, we'll get to the breakdown of the salaries and what it looks like based on a salary-based expectation standpoint. But what do you think this passing game looks like with T. Higgins in that clear alpha role, Tyler Boyd, the clear wide receiver too? And who do you think kind of steps up into that third? Who are the tertiary options in Cincinnati who step up here?
I think it's probably Mike Thomas as the most likely. But we could see this flipped around a little bit. I'm not entirely sure. They've used a little bit of Trent Taylor. They actually ran the same amount of routes in their most recent game. but Trent Taylor plays almost exclusively in the slot. That would be a more logical replacement for Tyler Boyd if he were hurt. So Mike Thomas, more of a perimeter receiver. I think he's on the field more. But ultimately, we're dealing in kind of like uncharted waters here. We've seen T. Higgins miss time. We haven't really seen Jamar Chase miss time. So do they go with Mike Thomas? Do they decide to flip their personnel around a little bit, use Trent Taylor? Do they decide to use more 12 personnel? It's something they've done in the past with like a Mitchell Wilcox, even though he doesn't really offer much as a pass catcher. My first guess is it will be Mike Thomas, but I'm really curious to see because with Jamar Chase out for multiple weeks, this is going to be something we need to pay attention to.
On the other side here, Cleveland has a couple of key inactives, and we'll get to the offense in just a minute, but Denzel Ward is out, and we were expecting this, but ultimately that's a key inactive when you think about T. Higgins and his likelihood of hitting a ceiling performance here. Neil, is there anything that kind of you're looking at when you just look at the game breakdown in general where you would just shy away from T. Higgins because the Cleveland defense could stop him? I mean, on paper, their pass defense, 28th in Football Outsiders DVOA, 31st in yards allowed per pass attempt. Their quarterback 1 in Ward is out. Are you seeing anything at all that doesn't make T. Higgins all systems go here?
No, T. Higgins is all systems go. What do we have for ownership? I guess that would be the only thing that would make me. We've got T. Higgins at 49% projected ownership in the flex spot. In the captain spot, we've got T. Higgins at 15% projected ownership. That doesn't really scare me. That seems like I'm probably even going to be a little bit above that just based on projections. I've run crunches. Now I'm kind of adjusting on the fly here. I'm trying to get lower, but just based on projections, I was getting to all the T. Higgins, like 95%. I don't think I want 95% T. Higgins, but I'm probably going to end up above the field on T. Higgins. It's just such a great spot against this Browns defense. He's the clear wide receiver 1, and he's only 8,000. Like he should be in this spot probably 11,000, and he's only 8,000. So just a great spot.
We'll go into it more when we break down each individual team, but basically this whole hour before lock here is going to be you guys somewhat convincing me either I need to go absolutely all in on T. Higgins like I am, or talking me down from this ledge, because I'm with you, Neil, right now. He looks like a fantastic value on DraftKings and FanDuel right now. All right, give us a like and subscribe, guys. We got to talk about the Cleveland Browns here, how they might go about winning this game. It does mean a lot. We got a ton of people watching, and we don't have enough likes. That's ultimately how I'm feeling. Neil, is there any sort of trick or maybe a treat we could give them today? Some little tidbit of knowledge that you want to give them, or something that maybe we could get some more thumbs up here right now.
Guys, let me tell you about Dearness Johnson. What's funny is I'm going to be playing some Dearness Johnson. That's the weirdest thing that I can say probably about this slate. The weirdest guy that I'm going to play, and he makes no sense. If that's the kind of thing you're looking for, just a tidbit into the bad plays. I play an approach that Jordan Cooper called it on the last episode that we did of Theory of DFS. He called it looking like an idiot until you don't. That's kind of how I approach DFS, and that's kind of what I'm doing with Dearness Johnson today. He's going to come in at 0 ownership, under 1% ownership. I'm actually going to be playing some Dearness Johnson, maybe 3 or 4%, maybe 5. I don't know how much I'm going to get exactly. I'm going to be trying to get above the field though. And the reason is just Kareem Hunt being on the trading block, and he's active for this game. So probably Kareem Hunt is playing his usual role, but I think that there's a world in which Kareem Hunt, they sit him out as they're fielding offers for Kareem Hunt. Dearness Johnson takes over. Obviously there's always an injury possibility. It's a thin play. The most likely outcome here is that Dearness Johnson gets 0 snaps, as he has in most games this year. But we saw him play 9 snaps a couple weeks ago when the game got out of hand. I think there's the injury possibility, and then I do think the trade deadline is tomorrow, and Kareem Hunt is that they're fielding offers for Kareem Hunt. So I think there is a world in which we see Dearness Johnson play a little bit more this week. So I'm actually doing it 0.7% projected ownership. That's just the right number for me.
Okay, all right, Neil. My man, you didn't just give us candy. You poured the whole bowl into the people's backpack. Come on, guys.
I want those likes. By the way, I don't do it for free, guys. I do it for likes.
We do it for the likes. We got a 1 to 10 watching to like ratio. That is just despicable. I can't leave this chair with that number being the way it is. That can't stay the same. And we also just got that great little nugget of knowledge from Neil Orfield.
A play that you probably should not play is what I just gave. So that's the candy you got from me.
Hit subscribe as well. You can hit that notification bell, get the alerts for all the shows when we go live. Almost all our content available in podcast form. Makes a huge difference on those podcast platforms that you listen on. If you leave us a rating and review, 5-star review preferably, that always helps. All right, Matt Gajewski, I've heard of this Nick Chubb guy, and regardless of how Kareem Hunt and D'Ernest Johnson end up producing today, I think the Browns like to run the ball, and they're going to do it a whole lot today against a Bengals defense that is okay in most defensive metrics against the run.
Yeah, I mean, I think that should be their go-to approach. He is the most efficient running back from just a pure rushing standpoint in the entire NFL. So obviously he's going to be a good play unless Cleveland just gets drastically down in this game. That's really the only sort of game script factor that affects Nick Chubb a lot. They'll just use Kareem Hunt in pure passing situations. But Lafayette and I did this exercise this morning. How many routes do you think separate these two in the air?
25.
Yeah, that was a really good guess. It's about that. It's not as drastic as you would have thought. Nick Chubb actually has run over 100 routes this year, and Kareem Hunt's in that same area too, just slightly ahead of him. So it's not quite as drastic as it has been in recent years. But all that to say, Nick Chubb is an excellent play tonight. From a DFS perspective, there's real no issues fitting him. We'll talk about the value plays, but it's wide open in terms of who you want to play tonight. So I'm kind of just falling back on our tools. Nick Chubb is essentially even in terms of leverage. You're getting slightly more leverage in the utility spot with him, but obviously you can build creative lineups with him in the captain, with or without him. All that to say, I think he's an excellent play.
If you look at our projected stats tool over on Stokastic.com, we got him projected for about 17 to 18 rushes. Honestly, if the game flow goes the way anywhere near Cleveland wants to, that's honestly a conservative number. We got him projected as a median projection for nearly 87 yards on the ground and a 50 to 60% chance of a touchdown. Outside of Nick Chubb, Neil, this is a situation where it's Amari Cooper and then a guessing game. I know a lot of people already in chat talking about DPJ, the ability to take the top off the defense. I think that's a solid option, but let's put it in, just off the top of your head, percentage chances this team comes out pass heavy and throws, say, more than 35 up to 40 times in this game.
Man. 30%. They're not generally, maybe less than that, maybe 25%.
The number was 25% in my head.
Yeah, that seems about right. I mean, they're not a team that wants to throw the ball a lot. They might need to against the Bengals. I don't know if they come out and do it, but maybe by the end of the game, maybe the second half, they're needing to throw against the Bengals. Yeah, Amari Cooper very clearly the wide receiver one on this team, but DPJ hasn't been that far behind him in terms of routes run. He's like right there behind Amari Cooper in routes run. He's only been targeted, I think, 40 times on the year. So he's, clearly behind Amari Cooper in the pecking order, but I like DPJ as a guy who can, put up points in a hurry just on one big play. I also have some interest in David Bell. He's been targeted 9 times so far. He's played 7 games this year. He's been targeted 9 times. So we haven't seen the targets yet. We have seen the routes run, though, go up significantly the past couple of weeks. The first couple of weeks of the season, he was playing around 30% of snaps. The last 2, he's been playing around 60%. So the snaps are going up for David Bell. He's a talented rookie, 3rd rounder. I like the idea of David Bell maybe getting more involved as the season goes along.
I like that call a lot. And especially if you look at weighted opportunity, which is just share of team air yards and share of team targets, weighted in a way that's more predictable for the future. Over the last 5 weeks, Amari Cooper, of course, leads this team. But DPJ is nipping at his heels, a 0.57 weighted opportunity versus 0.5. I know those numbers don't mean a lot, but the fact that they're close is the point I'm trying to make here. David Njoku is right behind him. So to your point, David Bell and these players behind him, possibly Harrison Bryant, they're going to need to step up, or we're going to see this passing game consolidate around Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones. Matt, outside of Chubb, Hunt, Donovan Peoples-Jones, and Amari Cooper, absolutely everyone is essentially a dart throw on this offense. That's the general theme of this Cleveland offense, right?
Yeah, you also have some debate on what this team is going to do. They use some pretty heavy 12 personnel, which gets, even before the David Njoku injury, we had some pretty good snap shares for Harrison Bryant in certain games. I think he just 1-for-1 comes right on the field and fills that role. But then what do? Do they give David Bell extra work? Do they use more 11 personnel? That's kind of what I think they should do. If you look at David Bell's profile, he's a pretty big receiver. He's like 6'3", 220, really slow. So he kind of actually looks a little bit like David Njoku, honestly, with worse athleticism, he could function as your big slot receiver, kind of in the same mold that David Njoku operates. So I don't think that's the worst idea. And then they'll probably use, like the Pharaoh Browns and Miller Forrestalls of the world in certain 12 personnel packages like they do with Harrison Bryant at times. But overall, I think David Bell is an excellent dart throw type play on tonight's slate for the potential role increase he may receive.
The Bengals pass defense, in some metrics, look like one of the top pass defenses in the NFL. Now, no Eli Apple. That's not totally game-changing by any stretch for the Cincinnati Bengals pass defense, but they are 7th in Football Outsiders pass DVOA, 17th in yards allowed per pass attempt. I respect their pass defense, and I don't think super highly of the Browns pass offense. Football Outsiders has them right at league average. You guys about ready to dig into the salaries and see who our best plays are on this showdown slate? You guys ready to dig into this?
Let's do it.
All right. Before we do, I have one question that I ask on every single one of these shows that I host. Neil, we'll start with you. Just again, off the top of your head, percentage-wise, what is the chance that this game goes a touchdown over its current Vegas total of 45?
A touchdown over. Again, right around maybe 25%.
Okay. Gajewski, same question to you.
Yeah, I think I'm going to say that every time, just mathematically.
Oh, that's not fair. That's no fun.
I mean, that
put a little lean in it.
That's
you get it. The lines are important, what they are.
Yeah, they are efficient.
Fair enough, Matt. It's true. I would put this.
I've got the dumb math brain. I can't help it.
You can't help it.
I didn't choose this life. Every time I go to the grocery store, I'm thinking about the opportunity cost of buying like one brand of hot dogs over the other. It's just my brain, man. I can't help it.
Wait, what? Okay. Do you have in your head what the exact dilemma was? Like which hot dog brand versus which one? Because I want to know which what we
should not get into the hot dog debate on air.
I'd kind of like to hear it though. I feel like we should. I feel like we should get into this. This seems really important to you.
It's not a typical
how do you even quantify what the opportunity cost is there?
Well, so it's not just this is ridiculous. Do you have Quick Trip in Minnesota, Neil?
We do.
Yeah, Quick Trip is awesome. They have like the cheapest, best hot dogs. Or I could go to the grocery store and take the time to cook them myself for a slightly cheaper price.
Okay.
So
what did you choose?
I'll go to Quick Trip.
The better hot dog for the slightly increased price.
And well, there's also another factor. If I have a whole pack of hot dogs at my house, it's probably a bad health decision for me. I'm just going to eat them too fast. Anyway, let's talk football, not hot dogs.
I agree with I agree with what you did there, Matt, just by the way. Okay, we'll get into it. We appreciate you guys. Let's talk for a minute about our sponsor, though. No House Advantage. No House Advantage is awesome. First of all, their platform looks fantastic. Second of all, they have intriguing contests on every single slate for the NFL, NBA, and other sports as well. And they have huge overlay. I haven't checked right now. I'm going to guess that the No House Advantage overlay for the big tournament tonight is at 50%. It is currently at 537 of 1,600, 34% full. That is incredible. Okay, the $5 entry one is 29% full, has 1K to first. These are bankroll building contests, Matt, and ultimately, I think No House Advantage is a great third platform. If you click the link in the video description below, you get $50 free. If you make a deposit of $50, they'll match that first deposit up to $50. Matt, I just think this is a really good place people should be expanding their game to.
Yeah, absolutely. I was on the fence initially when I started this, and what put me over the edge is how easy it is. We literally have tools on our site that help you with this. There's optimal lineup percentages. It literally takes all the work out for you, especially if you're somebody that's just hunting overlay at the last second. Maybe you dedicate your time to like DraftKings or something else. You can add this third platform with essentially no time involved right now because of the tools we have. So I'll always be on the supporting our tools bandwagon, but this is a really, really good application.
And right now, guys, on Stokastic.com, the No House Advantage tool is absolutely free. So free 99 to actually get you the conversion of our projections, the same ones that power our DFS lineup generators and all the other tools at Stokastic.com to help you convert all that 2 no house advantages, really cool way to play. They also have the versus the house, essentially prop betting as well. Just a really cool time to get in there. Take advantage of that $50 first match deposit bonus. We really appreciate them being a sponsor of the show. All right, guys. Cincinnati Bengals implied point total right now in Vegas, 24. They lose a key player. They have a running back with one of the most sure opportunity profiles in the NFL. Actually, let's start there because we already talked about the passing game and Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins and how effective they could be. But Neil, I'll kick it to you first. What about Joe Mixon has gone wrong in the fact that he just is not performing up to expectations for the most part this season, despite getting a huge workload week after week?
Yeah, he's just been inefficient. He's not when he gets the ball in the red zone, he's not getting into the end zone. I feel like he's had so many opportunities, especially early on in the year. He was just targeted a ton. He was carrying a ton. He's actually seen fewer opportunities recently. So maybe they saw the inefficiency and decided to go away from Joe Mixon. I still like him quite a bit in this matchup with the Browns. I think that it's a great get right spot for Joe Mixon. But they played the Falcons, I believe, last week. Some terrible defense again last week, and I was all in on Joe Mixon. Looked good right away. Scored a touchdown right away in the first quarter. I thought I was going to cash in on all my Joe Mixon, and then he did not do much the rest of the game. So similar spot here. I'm probably going right back to him. This is obviously showdown, so it's a lot easier to go back to Joe Mixon. But yeah, he has not really looked that great so far this year.
Yeah, I'm sorry to curveball you guys. I know we usually go quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, but I know you're consummate professionals. Ultimately, Matt, though, Joe Mixon looks like he's simply too much in salary on FanDuel for sure. On DraftKings, it's a little bit better, but he looks more positively leveraged as a flex play than a captain play. If you're talking about a running back who gets 20 opportunities like he did against Atlanta, there's always a chance that he could be the optimal captain or MVP here. But really, he looks like a tough bet to be ultra efficient, even though Cincinnati's defense is only so-so against the run.
Right. And I think you're kind of balancing a couple things here. Their offensive line hasn't been great in Cincinnati. They've shown improvement. I think this is largely because you are dealing with a patchwork offensive line to start the year. So once they get some continuity, it should improve. So that kind of makes sense to me. It's still not a great unit by any means, but Mixon's role, I think, is fine here. He certainly has the matchup to target. Cleveland's been terrible against the run, even with some of the big names they have on their defense. And a lot of them aren't playing tonight. I'm sure we'll get into the specifics on that later. I don't know what to do with him in the captain versus the flex. I know I want to play a decent amount of Joe Mixon. I'm trying to rationalize his ownership here because I honestly think more people are going to play the T. Higgins, Joe Burrow side of this game rather than Joe Mixon as a runner. So I think there's ways you can creatively build him into your captain spot. And maybe because of the slightly negative leverage, because our tools, they're indicating that maybe you go like a 3-3 build instead of 4-2s. I'm sure we'll talk about overall strategy too, but it's looking like there's going to be a lot of 4-2 builds, a lot of 5-1 builds, just with the value we have on the Cincinnati side.
I will say one thing that really surprised me when I opened up the tools this morning was seeing the projected ownership for Joe Mixon at the captain spot on DraftKings, sub 15%. That seems really low for a player who could get 20 plus opportunities in this game. That volume is few and far to come by. Obviously, people are going to want to play the running back on the other side. Okay, we will swing back now to the quarterback. The Joe Burrow, the only conundrum is the Jamar Chase problem. We know Joe Burrow has been finally unleashed over the last few weeks. We just don't know what this offense is going to look like without a key and integral piece. Neil, do you think Joe Burrow is a viable quarterback at his salary at the captain spot? And is he one that you would use in cash games? I know that's not your forte every week, but would you use him there?
Absolutely, he's viable. I mean, we've got him owned at 13.5% projected ownership in the captain spot, 13.8% optimal. So slight positive leverage in the captain spot. And then also in the utility spot, 55% ownership, 65% optimal. So Joe Burrow looks great. Whether I'd use him in the captain spot in cash games, maybe. It's really, you're right that it's not my forte, but I think he would be somebody that I would consider there. You need a pretty high raw projection in that captain spot. I think people sometimes are tempted to play the 200 guy that allows them to jam all the studs. I think you really need somebody who has big upside in the captain spot. It would probably be T Higgins for me, but again, I don't play cash games. T Higgins seems like the call for me just because he's a better point per dollar play who still clearly has all that upside, still is likely to put up a big score, but it's probably between Higgins and Burrow for me if I were playing cash in the captain spot.
The downside with Burrow, obviously, is if the Browns can get to him, cause pressure. They actually have looked good at times, causing pressure, but it's just so few and far between that. Matt, are you seeing what's the risk of ruin playing Joe Burrow? What are his floor chances, his complete bust chances here? Or should I just kind of go with the tools in the fact that he's a quarterback on a 1-game slate and there's so much uncertainty with Brissett?
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. And really, like, price doesn't matter a ton on this slate. You could captain Burrow without really making a ton of concessions if you really want to go that way. Just that Neil brought up a good point. T. Higgins is really underpriced. And theoretically, he should be handling a vast majority of these targets tonight. So I think the chance of either of them busting is low, but for Higgins at his price and the target share he should command, that's very low as well. And I guess it's a good time to mention the injuries to the Cleveland secondary. It's not just Denzel Ward. They've got a couple guys banged up back there. So I don't know who's going to be covering T. Higgins, but I don't think it's going to be a very good player.
So the stack is obvious, high upside, and doesn't have that much risk of failure. This sounds like good chalk to me, even though there's a lot of the field that's going to be with it. This is one of those situations, Neil, where maybe you go over the field on situations that look really, really excellent. Is that how you're reading it?
Currently, I'm over the field. I think that is my plan. You look at our tools, the tools would tell you to go over the field on Joe Burrow. I think that's the right read. Yeah.
There you go. Okay. So we already hit the running game, the main guy, Joe Mixon, but let's expand it now. The running back position isn't just Mixon. I guess Samaje Perine would be the next man up here. Neil, you are the king of these backup running backs. Tell the people, you already talked about a backup on Cleveland. Where are you headed in the Cincinnati depths of the running back depth chart?
Yeah, so I'm not really targeting Samaje Perine that much. The reason being, he just hasn't had that many opportunities this year. He's coming in at 9.1% ownership, and he's 4,800. So even if he does have a fluky touchdown, I mean, fluky is maybe the wrong word here, but even if he does have his rare touchdown, at 4,800, it doesn't necessarily pay off his price tag. And with that 9.1% ownership, I would love him if he were 3% owned, because the price tag is clearly too high. But the ownership seems to, I think it's come up throughout the day, which is scaring me off him a little bit. I think I'm probably going to end up under the field on Perine, and it's going to scare me because he's also in a situation where he's, an injury to Joe Mixon away from being the guy for the Bengals, and he's probably just smashing this price tag. But yeah, I think I'm probably going to end up under the field on Perine if he really does come in at 9%.
That makes sense to me, right? We're talking about a player who is viable in a milli maker situation because they get 5 opportunities a game total. That isn't a good play, especially when you're talking about a high salary and kind of popular player. He averages less than half a red zone touch per game, so the expected value is not that high at all. Matt, is that the same way you're seeing it here? Is there any value in the backup running back, or is it Mixon or bust when you're talking about Cincinnati running backs today?
I think it's Mixon or bust. I find it hard to believe Samaje Perine is going to be 9% owned, but that's just me. I don't know. Maybe it's people don't know about these value plays, but I also find that hard to believe. There's just an abundance of cheap value that's actually going to be on the field. Samaje Perine, I mean, Neil said it best. Even if he falls in the end zone, that doesn't necessarily pay off his value. He at 4,800 on tonight's slate, he needs to do a little bit more to pay that off. So I think it's a bit thin.
We have him projected in our projected stats page, just updated 11 minutes ago, always up to the minute here, a 6.3% target share, which honestly seems kind of high, but that would amount to maybe 2 to 3 targets and 2 rushes. If you want to go for it, you can. I think we kind of said enough here. The Browns defense against the run, not good. Hopefully this is the time that Joe Mixon cashes in if you're going there instead. We move to the wide receiver position. We've already talked a ton about who these 2 big players in the Cincinnati wide receiver core will be. T. Higgins looks like they are in a smash spot. Now let's talk about Tyler Boyd. Matt, I'll go right back to you here. Boyd has been prolific on a team that has had star wide receivers come in since he was drafted. He was prolific in college. I know you know that as well. What do you think of this new opportunity here? We've already seen him cash in. He had a huge long touchdown, I believe, last week as well.
Yeah, Pride of Pitt. He should have a big role tonight. And he's had more explosive plays this year. You're seeing him actually catch some pretty, like downfield long targets. And that was with Jamar Chase. With him out, you should be seeing a little bit just more activity from Boyd, which I think is solid here. He's extremely positively leveraged in our tools. And I'm thinking I'm going to use a lot of Boyd in captain. I'm going to use a lot of Boyd in the utility spot. If you captain Boyd, essentially the world is yours. You play one other value play in the flex and you can do whatever you want in your lineups. So he's awesome. And I like the way that lineups are constructed with him, because I think as long as you're just not purely maxing out the salary, you can make some really good lineups with Boyd, and he's going to have an awesome target share.
Neil, do you feel the same way? He looks excellent in our tools right now.
Yeah, so I'm currently slightly under the field on Boyd and trying to adjust things, trying to figure where I can cut back on other players to get to more of Boyd, because, you got to make concessions. But yeah, Boyd is clearly a great spot at 6,400. He makes all the sense in the world. 36% ownership, as Matt said, looks under-owned in the tools. So I'm trying to get to a little bit more of Boyd. I still don't think I'm going to be well over the field on Boyd in the util spot. I might try to focus more on getting above the field on Boyd in the captain spot, just because of that price tag and what it allows you to do with the rest of your lineup.
That's kind of the way I'm seeing it. I mean, it's nice to agree with the tools for once, but ultimately, I think this is a chance for the Cincinnati offense. Not only is it slated to score more points than this Cleveland offense on the other side, but this offense could consolidate in terms of opportunities. That is fantastic for fantasy football in general. So I do think Tyler Boyd at that reduced price tag compared to T. Higgins looks really good. Now, Mike Thomas, I'm actually surprised that we've kind of taken a stand at the Stokastic projections. Mike Thomas looks like he could have 6 to 8 fantasy points here. And at a price tag of $1,200, that would be very interesting to someone like you playing tournaments, Neil. Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, that's true. That would probably pay it off. I mean, as we've talked about, there's so many value options on this slate that it's not necessarily enough. If you just get 6 to 8, you'd probably need double digits.
But that's a median projection, right?
Right. Yeah, he could clearly spike a ceiling where he pays it off. Yeah, I'm trying to get to Mike Thomas. That 17.6% ownership. I was hoping it would be lower, frankly, that maybe people would not really know the name and not play him that much, but he still looks a little bit under. We've got him at 1.7% owned in the captain spot, 3.1% optimal. So it looks like another solid value captain play. Doesn't take much for him to pay off that price tag. And he, we say Tyler Boyd allows you to play whoever you want. Mike Thomas really allows you to play whoever you want at 1,200. So makes some sense in the captain spot. Yeah, I think Mike Thomas is a pretty obvious solid play here as the likely wide receiver 3 for the Bengals. I think that's what we've seen in the past with one of the top guys out. Mike Thomas kind of, cycles in to be in that trio.
And let's clarify what Neil is saying, right? He's trying to take down the biggest prizes in the biggest tournaments here, right? We're talking about Mike Thomas showing up in our simulations as an optimal captain, something like 2.5 to 3.5% of the time, which is more than his expected ownership. It's still something that 97% of the time or something like that isn't optimal. But again, that question we always ask ourselves, what happens when we're right? Matt, I think you can probably close us out with Trent Taylor. You mentioned he's going to be primarily a slot receiver where he splits time likely with Boyd, who should move in and out. Taylor has a very, very low salary, 200, and so that makes him somewhat appealing, but he has a pretty decent projection for someone with that low of a salary, no?
Yeah, he does. And I think he's a solid pivot away from Tyler Boyd if you want to go that way. Again, it comes down to we don't know what this team is going to do with Trent Taylor and their entire receiving core. Like, would we be terribly surprised to see them move Tyler Boyd outside the slot on certain plays to get Trent Taylor out there? Maybe they trust him more. I don't think it'd be the most surprising thing in the world. You look at where Tyler Boyd's run his routes this year, it's largely in the slot, but he has 64 snaps out wide. It's not like he can't go out there on occasion. So I think Trent Taylor offers direct leverage from those of you playing a lot of Mike Thomas. It doesn't feel good, but this is more of your Millie Maker style play where you're playing Trent Taylor just for the fact that he's going to be more contrarian.
Look, obviously there's an injury, so we have to take these numbers with a grain of salt. But these are the routes run numbers for Trent Taylor He was active in week 3 all the way till week 7. 0 routes, 0 routes, 0 routes, 2 routes, 4 routes. Has not received a target yet this year. Hey, we got him in the projections. He's a thin play. He's worth talking about. I think we need to talk about tight ends a little bit more. Obviously, Hayden Hurst, he's another one, another receiving option. Again, consolidated offensive opportunities, Neil, where he looks positive both at the utility spot and at the flex spot and looks good on both DraftKings and FanDuel.
Yeah, Hayden Hurst makes a lot of sense. And obviously the Jamar Chase injury, we assume that, these other wide receivers are going to step into bigger roles. Hayden Hurst could also have a bigger role just in terms of target share with Jamar Chase not playing in this game. So Hayden Hurst makes a lot of sense. As you said, he's just 5,200. He's been pretty solid all year. He actually looks very neutral in the tools. Maybe I need to refresh. I've got him. He looks almost like 3% ownership in the captain, looks about neutral, and then 21%. Yeah. So yeah, 3.5% ownership in the captain spot, 3% optimal. That's, fine. You're leaving salary on the table. These numbers are a good indicator. They get you directionally in the right way, like how good of a chance a player has of spiking. But sometimes when they're this close to being neutral, I might want to play more than 3.5% of Hayden Hurst in the captain spot, just because he does, when you're leaving salary on the table, he allows you to get to some better lineups. So he makes a lot of sense. And then in the utility spot, 21%, 21.6% owned, 21.8% optimal, as neutral as they come. I like Hayden Hurst quite a bit.
So looking at the last 4 weeks, the last 4 games for the Cincinnati Bengals, only Jamar Chase has more targets in the red zone for this Bengals team. He has more than Joe Mixon, more than T. Higgins. I think it's a really solid play tonight, especially against a Browns pass defense that has struggled against both the tight end and the wide receiver position. Matt, talk to me about Hayden Hurst, and then, do we have to talk about Mitchell Wilcox at all? Is that just too thin of a play? He is super cheap at 800.
Yeah, Hurst is awesome. He's kind of playing a little bit of a better role than what we saw Uzomah play last year, which is solid. And he's attached to an explosive offense. So the touchdowns are going to come more frequently for him than, say, a player on like the New York Jets. So Hayden Hurst at his price makes a lot of sense. I think he's going to be less owned than your Tyler Boyds of the world. And he's kind of at a unique price point where I do want to get to a lot of Hayden Hurst. This is an interesting slate overall, where I look at our top plays tool for Showdown, and the top 5 plays are Joe Burrow and his 4 pass catchers, which is unbelievable. So basically what it says to me is you can't really go wrong as long as you're stacking Joe Burrow to some degree in your lineups. Now, you can get creative around that. You don't necessarily need to use Burrow in the captain. You could certainly use one of these pass catchers, or you could even deviate to Mixon. But you want to stack Joe Burrow to some degree. This is what the tools are telling me now. And I think Hurst is an excellent way to do so. As far as Wilcox goes, he's in that GPP flyer territory, sort of like Trent Taylor, where he'll be on the field a little bit. Maybe Cincinnati decides to play more 12 personnel with the loss of Jamar Chase. We just don't know. So I view him more as a blocker, but as we know, sometimes these blockers get a random end zone target, and that can be the difference in these showdown slates.
Particularly on showdown slates. Neil, how you feeling about Mitchell Wilcox? And we'll close out the Cincinnati Bengals here.
So I'm sad to say, so I just submitted my first run of lineups, and I have 0 Mitchell Wilcox currently, which was not intentional. I hate to get 0% of a player a player who I think is viable, though. I'm just like, I just picture him scoring that touchdown on the first drive, and like all my lineups, all this work that I put in today, and all my lineups are dead immediately. I hate it. I don't want to have 0% Wilcox, but currently I have 0% Mitchell Wilcox. I might try to get a little bit, but he's coming in at 4.8% ownership, which to me is probably a little bit over owned. Let me actually check what our tools say. I need to see if we're in line here, but that strikes me as a way under over owned. Yeah,
we're seeing that exactly how you expected.
Yeah, so I'm at 4.8% ownership. It's probably the correct move for me to be under the field on Mitchell Wilcox. It just hurts knowing that my lineups could be dead so early. Maybe I'll come back and try to get 1.3% or whatever I'll get, but not a high priority for me.
For those of you who've watched these live before lock shows, Neil is excellent at multitasking here as he tweaks these lineups, but he's been known to tinker here at the very end. I will say that. And
I'm a tinkerer.
It's done very well for you as well, sir. I think we can move on to the Cleveland Browns, and we got to talk about this passing game. But before we do, I got to talk about the show that just finished less than an hour ago. Greg and Eric are absolutely crushing it night after night on these deeper dives and live before lock. And the NBA is back with a vengeance at Stokastic. And we have got an awesome offer for those of you who have never used Stokastic before. So if you're a new user, listen up here, because this is just an awesome time to get into the action with a new code we have available to you. Producer Mike, if you can throw it into the chat, it's also in the video description below. You get a risk-free 3-day free trial. Everything on the site, except for Fantasy Cruncher, we don't own them. Everything on the site, the NBA DFS projections, NBA DFS ownership, the 1v1 tools, the lineup generator, the top stacks tool, it's all available to you absolutely free for 3 days. Get into the action, start winning some money, take advantage of all the shows and content we have. Thank you, producer Mike, throwing that onto the screen as well. It's an awesome time for sports with the World Series, the NBA, the NHL back in action, and of course, the NFL giving us the best possible product for every single showdown slate they possibly could. Thank you to the NFL, of course, but it truly is a great time to get into the Stokastic ecosystem with this awesome offer in the NBA. Get started with the link in the video description below. Jacoby Brissett has been okay, and it's funny, I asked you, Neil, off the top of your head, how many times does he throw more than 35 times? And you said 1 out of 4. And of course, he has thrown 35 times or more, 2 out of 4, but he only hit exactly 35 on one of them. So you were pretty good there if you're looking at his last few games. He's also had some sneaky rushing upside. What are you doing with Brissett when this team relies so much on the run?
Yeah, so I'm playing Brissett as I usually do. I get to a good amount of quarterbacks in showdown slates. On DraftKings currently, I'm sitting at like 40. Let me see. Yeah, 39% Brissett in the flex spot, and then at captain, I've got Brissett at 17.4%. So I'm above the field on Brissett, as I often am with quarterbacks, and that's partially, it's not entirely intentional. It's not because I really love to, but quarterbacks always have high floor and high upside. So I like to play quarterbacks on Showdown, and they just make sense in the ways that I like to build, where I'm playing Brissett at captain spot. I think there's high upside lineups often can start with the quarterback with different builds, where a lot of people aren't going to be doing Cleveland stacks. I feel like there is some upside in playing some Browns onslaughts, even if it's just 4-2 Browns. I feel like that's going to be a rare build today. And if you're going 4-2 Browns, I think it makes some sense to play the quarterback. So I'm getting above the field on Brissett. And, we've seen some of these quarterbacks, some of these underdog quarterbacks have come in even lower owned than we're expecting on Showdown slates. We had, who was Andy Dalton, came in extremely low owned the other day. I could see that happening with Brissett here as well. So I'm happy to be above the field here.
You brought it up. It's a trope we use on almost every one of these shows. He's a quarterback on a 1-game slate. And one thing I will say, while the team is 21st in the NFL in pass attempts per game, it's not 32nd like we used to see the Cleveland Browns. And they're also 6th in air yards, meaning they are attempting to push the ball downfield. And Jacoby Brissett quietly, even though he has 1 rushing TD only this year, is 10th in red zone carries per game among quarterbacks and top 13 among quarterbacks in carries per game. Matt, how are you feeling about Jacoby Brissett, whose metrics honestly look better than most people expected, but still is such a secondary option on this team compared to the running game?
Yeah, I think he's fine. Intuitively with Jacoby Brissett, he's sort of that high floor, low ceiling type option. And they clearly want to orchestrate their offense through the run game, but that's all reflected in his ownership. He's not the most owned player. He's actually coming in well below some of the pass catchers. Like, he's below Mixon. So at his price, I think he actually offers, a pretty intriguing play on a slate like tonight, especially where I'm anticipating the chalk builds to be 4-2s, 5-1s. Even if you just play Brissett with, like an Amari Cooper or DPJ, that might be semi-contrarian on a slate like tonight, where everyone is just riding Bengals onslaughts.
Hey, sometimes you got to be different, and getting different with a high floor quarterback with some sneaky upside, some sneaky ceiling upside, we should say, isn't that bad of a way to play things. But let's get to the main event. The main attraction of this Cleveland Browns team. This team goes as Nick Chubb goes. Neil, this is probably tough for you, because you probably, if I had to guess, let me guess, you are under the field on Nick Chubb.
You are correct. I am under the field on Nick Chubb.
Getting better at this.
Yeah, that's a good prediction there. I'm 28% currently on Nick Chubb in the flex spot, in the captain spot, I'm coming in at 6% Nick Chubb. He's just the salary is so high, and he doesn't project as well as some of these other plays on the slate. He could obviously rush for 3 touchdowns in a game and just kill my night. At least I have some Nick Chubb. It wouldn't entirely kill my odds here, but he's coming in at a little bit too much ownership relative to his odds of success. We've got him at 10% projected ownership in the captain spot. We have him optimal 6% of the time. So, coming in, I've got 6% Nick Chubb at captain. So I'm right with where we have his optimal rate. And then he actually, I guess in the util spot, he's 41% projected ownership, 46% optimal. So he is actually positively leveraged in the util spot, but as a function of me leaving salary on the table, he's just a concession that I'm making. I'm getting a little bit under the field, despite him looking good in the tools.
I think chat was mentioning it earlier. There is a chance this game, for obvious reasons, hits the under. If both running games are working, we're going to have a lower total plays in the game in general. And that is going to ultimately lead to a possibility that unless both teams are hyper efficient, they may not hit their implied totals. I do think that Nick Chubb at the utility spot offers value. Think about this. If it's one of these games where no one is scoring fantasy points at all, and we've had plenty of them on showdown slates, and most flex players are hovering around 3 to 6 fantasy points, his 15 to 18 fantasy points could be absolutely vital, even if you need a quarterback at that captain spot, if that makes sense, Matt. Ultimately, I feel like Nick Chubb is a great player with a tough salary to work in. Is that kind of how you're seeing it?
I mean, I don't really think it's hard to work in. There's plenty of value on tonight's slate to play literally whoever you want. Neil said it best. I think it's about making concessions. You can't go in there and play T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Joe Burrow, Amari Cooper. You can't play them all. So you have to leave somebody out. If you decide to leave out Chubb, I completely understand it. He's a very sensitive player, and a lot of it comes down to game script. When Cleveland is in clear pass sets, they seem to prefer their other back, Kareem Hunt. So there are paths for him failing. It's a terrifying fade, but ultimately you have to pick somebody to not play in your lineups. You can't play all 6 of the studs. So that's what it comes down to me, but I don't think he's hard to play price-wise.
I think that's fair. I wish we had a button for this. Maybe one day producer Mike and the crew will get it. Like this could be us galaxy braining it. Like we use statistical projections and simulations, and we work extremely hard. The data and tools team behind the scenes, they're unbelievable. Just a team of former and current DFS champions, including our co-founder Alex Baker. But ultimately, guys, we're talking about a player in Nick Chubb who is top 5 in true yards per carry, top 5 in yards per touch, top 5 in evaded tackles per touch, top 5 in total evaded tackles, top 5 in breakaway runs, and number 1 in the NFL in expected points added. He's #good. Now, I loved what Neil said about D'Ernest Johnson possibly taking work here as the producer Mike. There, I pressed a button. Verbally pressed a button, but I pressed it. That's awesome. You're the best, man. Neil, talk to me about this backup running back position, because you might be trying to get ahead of the curve here. You might be galaxy braining as well, but thinking that D'Ernest Johnson might actually see increased work with Hunt on the block this week.
I want to be clear here that I'm very much galaxy braining. It is a thin play. It is not somebody that I'm saying like you should be jamming into your lineups. If you're playing 20 lineups and you like to play with a contrarian mindset, if you're playing a very large field GPP, I think that he's worth taking one shot on, maybe in 20 lineups. That's probably a higher proportion. That's probably about actually what I will have in my 150. But I get weird. I play weird plays. The most likely outcome here by far is that D'Ernest Johnson scores fewer than 2 fantasy points. There's a real chance he doesn't see the field at all. But we know that Kareem Hunt is on the trading block. They've talked about how they're willing to grant his request for a trade. The trading deadline is tomorrow. I mean, this seems like a spot where maybe they don't play. Maybe he gets traded, mid-game. It's happened. I don't know. Does that happen in the NFL, or that happens in the NBA sometimes, where a player gets traded like after lock? I think that it could happen. We only have so much time before the trade deadline.
I think the Robbie Anderson deal went down during the game, and that's why they had him get off the field.
That's right. Yeah. It has happened before. It could happen here. Now, maybe that happens. The Browns just play Nick Chubb every down because, as we've talked about, Nick Chubb is good. Maybe they don't even go to Dearness Johnson, but I think Dearness Johnson has shown some talent in the past. Maybe I'm inflating him in my mind how good he was last year when he had an opportunity, but he looked like he stepped right into the role that these guys played, and he was right there with him. So at just the minimum salary, I think he makes some sense. While we're talking about running backs, I just want to say I talked about how I don't like Samaje Perine on DraftKings. Samaje Perine is only 5,000 on FanDuel and coming in at under 8% ownership. That's a lot more interesting to me because in my opinion, on FanDuel, he's more likely to just pay off that price tag, the 5,000 price tag, with just one touchdown. Because there's no PPR and stuff, it's easier to get into the optimal lineup. So I actually do like Samaje Perine. Now that I'm building on FanDuel, he's more interesting to me there. But yeah, Dearness Johnson, very much a galaxy brain play, very much a look like an idiot until you don't kind of play. But I'm going to go there.
I like that carve out for P. Ryan on FanDuel as well. Matt, the flip side here, the thing that has already happened instead of the thing that will happen. You know, Neil's pretty good at guessing those things every once in a while, I've heard. We're talking about a player in Kareem Hunt who is 4th in the NFL among all running backs in red zone touches, 8th among running backs with his 4 total touchdowns. And while he doesn't get the ball a ton, he still gets 11 opportunities a game against a Cincinnati defense that is not that tough against the run. They're 20th in yards allowed per rush attempt.
Right. And I mean, the role for him is good, and we've seen a ceiling. It's not all that long ago, week 1, I believe it was, where it was Kareem Hunt with multiple touchdowns. The problem I think you run into with Hunt is he's clearly in a timeshare, and he's priced similarly to players like Tyler Boyd. You can find the salary for less than $1,000 on DraftKings specifically and go up and play a guy who has a full-time role, whereas Kareem Hunt does not have it. I think he'll be under-owned today for that reason. And it seems like the narrative is like people around the industry are talking about this potential trade that may or may not happen. At the end of the day, if that trade's not already in place, they need to win this game. I don't think holding him out really helps because he's clearly a focal point of their offense.
Yep. Okay. That makes sense to me. And honestly, that's how I was looking at it, that he was going to be kind of an interesting choice with that reduced salary compared to Mixon and obviously Chubb there in that same backfield. Any other people we should be talking about? Johnson, we've probably talked about Dearness Johnson more on this stream than any live before lock stream this whole year. Maybe last year someone talked about it more, but we dig into the weeds here on live before lock. Can we move on to wide receiver?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, Amari Cooper. He's pretty good. He's had some spike weeks. He's actually looked decent. And man, let's talk about what we don't have to talk about it now, but the upside is going to be gigantic once Deshaun Watson's on the field as well. He is 7,600 on DraftKings, and he looks positively leveraged in our tools, Neil. Are you feeling that way as well? Even though again, we've said it over and over again, the passing game is absolutely secondary to the rushing game here.
Yeah, so I'm making a little bit of a concession. Actually, no, I am currently above the field. This is what I was trying to do. I'm a little bit above the field on Amari Cooper. The price is right at 7,600. We've got him coming in at 32% owned. I have him 36% currently. Yeah, he's been targeted 10 or more times, 4 times already this year. He's just the wide receiver one very clearly for Cleveland. I'm not taking a huge stand on Amari Cooper. I guess is what it comes down to. He's very clearly the wide receiver one for the worst offense going against the better defense. So it's a little bit of a tough spot, but Amari Cooper always has that upside. I'm getting to just with the field, essentially, slightly over the field currently, under the field actually in the captain spot currently, but not taking a huge stand. We know who he is. He's the wide receiver one. He's a very talented receiver, and he has had the opportunity 4 times this year, 10 or more targets.
I mean, that's pretty solid volume on a quote run first team, is it not? Oh, we also got a super chat here from Ryan Lotan. What's up, man? Favorite cash game captain on DK tonight? Matt, I'll kick it to you first.
It's T. Higgins. I think you're soaking up a lot of what Joe Burrow does at a cheaper price. So it allows you in cash specifically. I would rather get up and play a guy like Nick Chubb. So just going down from Burrow to Higgins in the captain spot allows you to get one more stud in your lineup. So it's Higgins for me.
Neil, same question.
Yeah, I like that call. We talked about it a little bit earlier. It comes down to Higgins or Burrow, and I haven't made a cash lineup, but I think Higgins probably makes the most sense just because of the cash savings there and what you can do with the rest of your lineup.
This is kind of similar. I know we're wrapping back around, but we're talking wide receivers now anyway. We're talking Cincy wide receivers for a minute. Neil, would you play 2 pass catchers from Cincinnati without Joe? That's a question from Double R. Hey, man, thank you for being a member of Stokastic, Team Stokastic, for 6 months, guys. You guys can be a member just like Double R by becoming a member today. That link below. Neil, kick it to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I would. I mean, I'm playing a lot of Joe Burrow, so I don't have a ton of it just because of how much Burrow I have. But I have no issue with having 2 receivers from Cincinnati without Burrow. Just looking at the price tags, I mean, look at how cheap these guys are. T Higgins is 8,000. Tyler Boyd is 6,400. Mike Thomas 1,200. We have really cheap options for the Bengals, and maybe Burrow is just too expensive to fit into the optimal lineup. We've got Nick Chubb you could play in there. We've got Joe Mixon you can play in there, and 2 isn't like a huge number of receivers, particularly given they could make it into the optimal lineup without even putting up that many points at these salaries. I think it's certainly fine to play 2 without Joe Burrow.
Cool. I completely agree. I do think that because of the way that we see how positively leveraged all these pass catchers are, mix and match. Finally, a slate where we actually have viable options, clear ceiling opportunities, and actually ways that we can be different from everyone else just by combining a couple of them. That's pretty nice. And remember, guys, when you're a member, you can ask that question as well, just like Double R did. Join the community. It's a really good time. Also, we got that free Discord as well. That place is popping off. Not only the premium Discord, don't even get me started about how cool the premium Discord at OddsShopper is, but that the community of almost 5,000 fantasy football, DFS, and betting players. It's one of the fastest growing sports communities in the world. It's a really cool time to get in there. I believe there's a link in the video description below. We'll get you a link for sure. All right, let's talk about Amari Cooper again, Matt, and then also Donovan Peoples-Jones has been shouted out in chat like 20 times. What do you think about him, and what do you think about the tertiary options in the receiving core for the Cleveland Browns?
Donovan Peoples-Jones, actually, it's a pretty good target share on the year, which, there's a little bit of sticker shock playing him, but I think there's essentially a Cleveland Browns leverage play at almost every single price point tonight. And it comes down to there's essentially a better projected Cincinnati Bengal in their range, but you could see each and any one of these guys being the leverage you need to win a tournament. Like DPJ is 200 cheaper than Hayden Hurst. He projects worse, but that's some direct leverage, and he's going to be a little less owned. If you got on a Harrison Bryant, he's at 4K flat. He offers leverage off really any of the kickers' defenses, as well as, like a Kareem Hunt potentially in that range. So I think like there's a lot of leverage to be had down here in some of this like ancillary Cleveland Browns pass catcher. If you're running just raw projections, you're not going to get a lot of DPJ, but I like running these kind of Cleveland Browns stacks for tournaments because I think, again, it's going to be mostly 4-2s, 5-1s. So even if you run like Nick Chubb DPJ, how many people are going to have that? How many people are going to have like Brissett, DPJ, Harrison Bryant? I don't think it's going to be as many as it should, and it comes down to pricing. Yeah, Cincinnati is very clear in terms of value, but for large field, I think this is a pretty clear path to be a little bit intelligent with the way you're being contrarian.
Neil, I got a trivia question for you.
Oh,
how many players who are active on the Cleveland Browns roster tonight have caught a touchdown pass in 2022?
All right, I'm going to assume Amari Cooper has, Harrison Bryant has, Kareem Hunt has. Okay. I'm going to go with probably somebody else. I'm going to go with 4.
The answer is 2.
Oh my God.
Outside of David Njoku, the only people to catch touchdowns on the Cleveland Browns this year are Amari Cooper and 1 receiving touchdown from Kareem Hunt. This is my concern here. Obviously, you got Njoku inactive, so that means there's a theoretical red zone opportunity for Harrison Bryant, but this team has shown so much red zone rushing propensity that I'm still really concerned about these tertiary options. And I know some of our tools are saying you could go there. Look, I don't think Donovan Peoples-Jones finishes the season with 0 touchdowns, assuming health. So I do think there's a possibility that you could just ride the wave there. But this team is so conservative when they get close to the goal line, and they simply don't score that many points, Neil. Talk to me about the players, the wide receivers specifically, who you are ahead of the field on.
For the Browns, I am, let me see. I am above the field. As I said, I'm a little bit above the field on Amari Cooper. I'm very slightly above the field on Donovan Peoples-Jones. And then I'm more than double the field on David Bell. I talked about the reasoning for that earlier. It's just because David Bell is coming in at 10% ownership. He's kind of a dart throw play, but he has played right around 60% of snaps each of the past 2 weeks. And I do think that he's a talented player, and I could see him getting more involved in this offense. It's not a sure thing. He's still a dart throw. He's not no sure thing here with David Bell, particularly with some of the guys around him in price. I mean, we've got Mike Thomas at 1,200 at just 18% ownership. So maybe I'm getting too much David Bell at the expense of some of these Bengals receivers. But just because the ownership is lower on him, I'm going a little bit heavier on David Bell. So I'm above the field on David Bell. I'm a little bit above the field on Mike Woods for no reason other than he's only 2.5% projected ownership. I know nothing about
You're
Mike
my hero.
Woods.
Where do you go to college,
Woods,
Matt?
Pride of Oklahoma. He actually transferred there. He went to Arkansas first. Maybe I got those flip-flop. He went to both of them.
Nice.
I love doing shows with you guys. You guys are wild. No, I mean, it makes sense. Look, we're trying to be different, and that's one way you're being different. Hey, I see Sterling, you mentioned that Sam asked a super chat, and I'm so sorry I can't scroll up all the way to it. So Sam, if you're here, go ahead and ask it again. We really do appreciate that. I'm sorry I missed that, guys. It definitely means a lot. And there is actually a super chat here from MM3 Chipoletti. Is there a benefit for the Browns to trade hunt? Chase isn't out for the wait. Is there a benefit for them trying to trade hunt? That's one question. Chase isn't out for the year. Is there a possibility they're trying to affect the market? I don't really get if those two things are related, Matt Gajewski. Is there a benefit to Cleveland trading Kareem Hunt?
Yeah, I mean, they have a stable of deep backs. They kind of lucked into Dearness Johnson out of nowhere. Dearness Johnson played in the AAF. I mean, this guy is a complete diamond in the rough, and he's played in spots already for Cleveland when one of them has been hurt and done really well. So they have an abundance of resources. If they could parlay that into like a premier pick and just continue to build, they've really had a war chest of draft picks in the recent future. I mean, I think that would interest anyone. Plus, he's a restricted free agent, so they might lose him for nothing at the end of the season.
That is what I wanted to say. They should get some value. Sam Pierce, here it is. Thank you so much, producer Mike behind the glass. I'm worried Higgins will be a bust. He is now going against the best cornerback, which he isn't used to. Am I crazy? Maybe in general, Sam, but this Cleveland pass defense, especially in the secondary, without Ward, without Jeremiah. I can't pronounce
Owusu Koromoa, Notre Dame.
Koromoa, that's right. Dame. That's right. They're undermanned and they don't look good in the metrics. Matt, do you agree here? T. Higgins is a smash.
T. Higgins is a smash. Yes.
I love it. Okay. Let's talk about the tight ends here. Harrison Bryan, we've mentioned several times here. We got about 8 minutes till lock. We'll absolutely get to the kickers and defense. I like to do those together all at the end because they kind of feel all the same when you're looking at median projection. Neil, what about this tight end position? Look, we've got Harrison Bryant, we've got Pharaoh Brown, we've got Miller Forrestall. I see those low salaries, and I see you salivating. Am I wrong?
Yeah,
kind of. I'm wrong?
No, you're not wrong. Yeah, we've got David Njoku out. Harrison Bryant is a guy that I love. He's 4,000. I'm right with the field. The field is at 15% Harrison Bryant. I'm at 15% Harrison Bryant. I like it. You actually scared me off him a little bit with your talk of him not scoring no touchdowns. I guess David Njoku was on the list of players who have scored touchdowns. Maybe Harrison Bryant. I'm expecting him to kind of just step into the Njoku role. I think that he's capable of doing it. But yeah, I'm right with the field on Harrison Bryant. I'm actually under the field on Pharaoh Brown. We've got Pharaoh Brown coming in at 7% ownership. That wasn't extremely intentional on my part. I have 2.7% Pharaoh Brown currently. I'm probably not going to change anything this late in the game, so I'm a little bit under the field on Pharaoh Brown. I think that 7% seems maybe about right. It looks like one share of Miller Forrestall. I think that I would rather get to. If I'm playing one of them, I'm playing Pharaoh Brown. I think Miller Forrestall has 2 targets in his career so far, so just doesn't strike me as a really strong play. Maybe Matt is actually the better one to ask about these tight ends because he actually knows a little bit more about these backups than I do.
Yeah, Matt, close us out with anything you want to add about these backup tight ends or anything you want to add about the Cleveland pass catchers, wide receiver, or tight end.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one they use more. Pharaoh Brown's been around for a while. He's popped up for some productive games and times, but he's also been used as a blocker in his career. Miller Forristall is actually like a two-way tight end. They actually spent some draft capital on him. He's out of Ohio State. Maybe he comes in and plays a little bit more for this team. I think these are just your pure GPP Millie Maker style dart throws at tight end. That's really the only reason to play them. Otherwise, I think you would just play guys like Mike Thomas instead of them.
All right, guys. Everyone's favorite, kickers and defense. Let's talk about them. Neil, are there any differentiation between the kickers? Obviously, there's the team that's favored to score more points, but is the salary differential enough to sway you? What are you doing with the kickers tonight?
Cade York has one of the lowest projections I've ever seen on a kicker.
Right?
So I'm playing more Evan McPherson. I'm actually at 5.4% Cade York currently, and that's after giving him big boost relative to our projection. Yeah, my preference is Evan McPherson. I guess is what it comes. There's only $200 difference in salary, and the projection difference is massive, like 5 points between these two. So yeah, for me, it's clearly Evan McPherson between the two of them. Do you guys see it any differently than I do?
Not really, Matt, unless you're seeing it really. So here's the deal. Cade York is a player on a conservative offense, and that means that sometimes when they're running the ball that much in the red zone, they're going to stall out. But the projection is pretty darn low. I like Evan McPherson quite a lot better. How about you, Matt?
I agree with you guys. I think I do want to get to a fair amount of kickers. I mean, I do have a little bit myself. I'm probably not going to change too much either, but my intuition is on slates like this, where you have Mike Thomas and some of these other guys, the kickers are going to go a little under-owned, but they've also been in winning lineups quite a bit this year. So I'm not sure that that's the right intuition either, but ultimately I'm pretty neutral on kickers, and that's generally how I am.
And then the defense here, the Bengals, I mean, obviously their median projection when you look at the simulations are laughably close. 6.8 versus 7.3. How are we ever going to decide between the two? But we do have a 400 salary difference on DraftKings. Neil, I'll kick it to you. I mean, this Browns defense just has not looked good all year. We've talked about their injuries all hour long. What's the upside here? Could Burrow just have a fall on his face kind of game? Are you playing those kinds of lineups?
So I'm currently under the field, but that was not really intentional. I actually really like the defense. I'm over the field on FanDuel. I kind of forced it in a little bit more on FanDuel. Joe Burrow has been sacked 24 times already this year. He is tied for third in the league, and that's before playing this game tonight. He gets sacked so often, and then he's also thrown 5 interceptions already this year. I think he threw 14 last year, so he is a little bit turnover prone, clearly sack prone with the bad offensive line. There's a reason to play the Browns defense here. And add on top of that, the Browns offense just might not be able to do much against this Bengals defense. Makes it more likely that the Browns offense makes it into the optimal lineup as potentially the only play from the Browns. That's obviously not a likely scenario, but it's more likely than I think it is on some slates. So I like this Browns defense actually quite a lot. And I don't mind playing them one bit against Joe Burrow. That's something I often like to do to get a little bit contrarian. A lot of people are scared of doing that. I think it makes some sense to have the Browns defense and Joe Burrow in the same lineups.
Yeah, I love that call too, not just from a being different strategy, but if you look at the Browns and their current ownership projections, it looks like almost 1 in 5 lineups will include the Browns defense, which isn't a great play on paper. But the minute you include them and the opposing quarterback, you're probably lowering the amount of people who are with you on that duo by an order of magnitude. Matt, we'll close out the kicker and defense here. Bengals versus Browns in terms of salary, in terms of defensive potential. You got a favorite, and how are you playing this tonight?
Yeah, I think this is really tight. It's slight preference to the Bengals for me, just the team projected to play ahead. We know Brissett can be shaky at times. This is going to be volatile because if Cleveland does get up in the game, we know how they prefer to play, and that's on the ground. But ultimately, if this plays to the spread, I think this is the better defense to target overall, not to mention battered with injuries on the other side for Cleveland.
2 minutes to lock here. We got over 1350 watching right now. Appreciate you guys a lot. We still could get that like button pressed a whole lot more, guys. It doesn't hurt you guys. It actually really helps us. That would be great. But I feel like Neil at PlayerQDFS and Matt Gajewski at Matt_Gajewski have given the people an incredible amount of holiday knowledge here, Halloween knowledge. Neil, where can the people find you as we hit 60 seconds to lock here? Let the people know what you're doing over at Stokastic, here at the Stokastic DFS channel, and over at stokastic.com.
And I'll add Matt Savoca at Draftaholic on Twitter has done a great job of hosting the show as well. So go give Matt a follow as well. I'm doing so nothing tomorrow. Actually, that's my one day that I'm not doing content is Tuesdays. Wednesdays, I'm coming back doing the strategy show in the morning, the first look at ownership with Lofty. And then I'm actually on Wednesday this week, I'm going to be recording a video about how I set up Fantasy Cruncher for the main slate. That's not something I'm going to be doing every week, but I am going to do it this week. I'm going to try to keep it evergreen, but I will also be talking about that slate in particular. So if you're using Fantasy Cruncher and you're still kind of new to it, maybe don't know exactly how you want to use it, you can check out that video. Should be coming out maybe Thursday after I record on Wednesday.
And how about you, Matt? Same thing here. You're doing so much in the NCAA and NFL streets. Let the people know where they can find you.
What if I could interest you guys in some Tuesday night Maction football? You know, Ball State playing Kent State. A lot of you guys are very interested in the college or in the NFL streets, but make sure to go over and check out college football if it's legal in your state. And we also have it on Tuesdays, Wednesdays. There's college football almost every single day, other than Sundays and Mondays throughout really the entire month. So make sure to check that out.
Oh, it really is the most wonderful time of the year in sports. We are at lock. Whether you choose the Manning cast or Aikman and Buck, we hope you guys have an awesome slate. For Neil Orfield at PlayerQDFS, Matt Gajewski at Matt_Gajewski. We have so much more for you on the Stokastic DFS channel. Check out the Odd Shopper channel with everything you need for all your sports betting needs. The Stokastic Fantasy Football and Notorious Fantasy Football channel as well. The Stokastic Media Network continues to grow. My name is Matt Savoca at Draftaholic. Let's win some money tonight, guys. Bengals versus Browns. Let's have a good one. Happy Halloween, guys.